The echo. It all started when I found the mirror. I was exploring the attic of my grandmother's old Victorian house, a place steeped in the whispers of time. Dust motes danced in the slanted sunlight filtering through a tiny window, and the air was thick with the scent of old books and forgotten memories. Amidst the clutter, there was an antique mirror, framed in tarnished silver, half hidden under a moth-eaten cloth. Something about it drew me in, a sense of familiarity that I couldn't quite place. I stood before the mirror, wiping away decades of grime. As I did, a chill ran down my spine. My reflection was slightly off, a heartbeat slower than my movements. When I stepped away, the mirror seemed to shimmer, as if it was a window to somewhere else. Intrigued and unnerved, I decided to leave it alone for the time being. That night, I dreamt of a world that was a distorted mirror image of our own. The next day, strange things began happening around the house. Objects moved on their own, and I could hear whispers just beyond the edge of comprehension. I chalked it up to nerves, but the sense of being watched grew stronger. One evening, as I gazed into the mirror, I saw a figure standing behind me, a shadowy version of myself, eyes glowing with a malevolent light. I spun around, but the room was empty. Determined to understand what was happening, I spent hours researching the history of the mirror. I discovered it was crafted by a 19th century occultist known for his experiments with alternate dimensions. As I delved deeper, I found references to something called the Rift, a portal between our world and another, darker reality. The more I learned, the more I realized the mirror was the key to accessing this parallel universe. One stormy night, curiosity got the better of me. I placed my hand on the mirror's cold surface, and it rippled like water. Taking a deep breath, I pushed through and found myself in a nightmarish version of my grandmother's house. The walls were decayed, the air was frigid, and shadows seemed to slither just out of sight. Panic set in, but I knew I had to explore further. In this alternate world, my every step echoed with an ominous, otherworldly sound. The house was empty, but I felt a presence watching me, tracking my movements. Rooms were filled with grotesque, twisted versions of familiar objects. I stumbled upon a journal belonging to someone named Elias, who had also crossed into this realm. His final entry was a warning: beware the shadows. Elias's journal detailed encounters with beings that thrived in darkness, feeding on fear and despair. I felt their presence more acutely with each passing moment. Desperate to return home, I retraced my steps, only to find the mirror gone. Trapped and terrified, I began hearing voices, some pleading for help, others taunting me. The shadows were closing in. In a frantic search for the mirror, I discovered a hidden passageway leading to the basement. There, in the flickering candlelight, stood a circle of mirrors. One of them was still active, its surface rippling like the one I had stepped through. As I reached for it, shadowy hands grasped at me, trying to pull me back. With a surge of adrenaline, I broke free and plunged through the portal, collapsing onto the attic floor of my grandmother's house. Breathless and shaken, I vowed never to touch the mirror again. But the house had changed. Subtle differences in the layout and decor hinted that I might not have returned to my original world. The whispers persisted, and I could still see glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corner of my eye. Had I brought something back with me? I contacted a paranormal investigator, Dr. Evelyn Hart, who specialized in alternate dimensions. Skeptical at first, she was soon convinced by the eerie occurrences around the house. She set up equipment to monitor the dimensional rift, hoping to find a way to seal it. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake the feeling that my doppelganger was still watching, waiting for an opportunity to take my place. Dr. Hart found a ritual that might close the rift, but it required a dangerous journey back to the other world. We prepared ourselves, gathering protective charms and setting up a tether to ensure our return. As we stepped through the mirror again, the shadows seemed to sense our intentions, growing more aggressive and malevolent. In the other world, we faced the true form of the shadows, amorphous, shifting entities that exuded malice. They attacked relentlessly, feeding off our fear. Dr. Hart recited incantations to weaken them while I fought to keep them at bay. Just as we were about to be overwhelmed, I noticed a familiar figure, my doppelganger, leading the shadows. The ritual required a sacrifice, something of great personal value. Realizing what I had to do, I took the locket my grandmother had given me, the last link to my family. As I cast it into the circle of mirrors, the shadows shrieked and recoiled. The portal began to close, and I could feel the world tearing apart around us. Dr. Hart and I barely made it through in time. Back in our world, the mirror shattered, sealing the rift forever. But the house was forever changed, haunted by echoes of the other world. Dr. Hart and I parted ways, both scarred by the experience. The paranormal investigator warned me that the rift, though closed, had left a mark on me, a connection to the other world that could never be fully severed. In the weeks that followed, the house remained eerily quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My reflection in other mirrors seemed to move independently, and at night, I heard whispers in a language I couldn't understand. Sleep became elusive, and I started to see shadowy figures lurking just beyond my vision. Desperate for answers, I revisited Elias's journal. Hidden within its pages, I found a map of the house, marked with symbols and notes about other rifts. It became clear that my grandmother's house was a nexus for these portals, a place where the fabric of reality was thin. The mirror was just one of many gateways to the other world. I reached out to others who had experienced similar phenomena, forming a small group of paranormal researchers. Together, we explored the house, uncovering more rifts and attempting to understand the nature of the other world. Each rift we closed seemed to strengthen the connection between our world and the shadows, making them more aggressive and desperate. Within our group, tensions grew as we delved deeper into the mysteries of the house. One of the members, Marcus, became obsessed with the power of the rifts, believing he could control the shadows. His experiments opened new portals, unleashing a wave of malevolence that threatened to consume us all. We realized too late that Marcus had become a pawn of the other world. The shadows, now free to roam our world, began to manifest more physically. We armed ourselves with what little knowledge and protection we had, preparing for a final confrontation. The battle was chaotic, filled with the screams of the damned and the howls of the shadows. Amid the chaos, Marcus revealed his true form, a twisted, corrupted version of himself, consumed by the shadows. In the end, it was my connection to the other world that saved us. Using the bond forged through my journeys, I managed to weaken the shadows and close the remaining rifts. Marcus was lost, consumed by the very power he sought to control. The house, now a husk of its former self, stood silent and empty. The echoes of the other world still lingered, a constant reminder of the darkness that lay just beyond our reality. I left the house behind, but its memories, and the scars of my encounters, stayed with me. The Edge. My name is Alex, and I never believed in the paranormal. It all started one quiet evening in my new apartment. I was unpacking boxes, settling into my fresh start. As I opened a dusty old mirror, a whisper seemed to brush against my ear. I turned quickly, but I was alone. Brushing it off as nerves, I placed the mirror on the wall and continued unpacking. The next morning, I noticed something strange. My reflection seemed delayed, just by a fraction of a second. I chalked it up to tiredness, but the unease settled in the pit of my stomach. That night, the whisper came again, clearer this time. "Help me." I spun around, heart racing, but again, no one was there. The whispers grew more frequent. They were almost impossible to ignore. One evening, while reading on the couch, I saw a shadow dart across the room from the corner of my eye. The whispers started to form words. "Find the key." I tried to focus, but the shadows were always there, just out of sight. Desperate for answers, I started investigating the history of the apartment. Hidden in a closet, I found an old journal. The entry spoke of a man named Edward who had experienced similar occurrences. His last entry was frantic, speaking of an alternate universe accessible through the mirror. I became obsessed with the idea of the alternate universe. I searched every inch of the apartment for the key mentioned in the whispers. One night, after a particularly loud series of whispers, I found a small, rusty key hidden behind the mirror. The whispers seemed to sigh with relief. The key fit perfectly into a small, previously unnoticed lock on the mirror's frame. With a deep breath, I turned the key. The glass shimmered and rippled like water. I reached out, and my hand passed through. Gathering my courage, I stepped into the mirror. I emerged into a place that looked like my apartment, but darker, more twisted. Shadows moved on their own, and the air was thick with tension. I felt a presence watching me, but I couldn't see anyone. The whispers were louder here, almost deafening. I found Edward. Or rather, what was left of him. His ghostly figure approached me, eyes filled with desperation. He told me he was trapped here, a prisoner of the mirror. He begged for my help to break the curse and free him. Edward explained the rules of this alternate universe. Time worked differently here. Every minute spent inside the mirror was an hour in my world. He also warned me about the creatures that lurked in the shadows, feeding on fear and despair. As if on cue, I heard growls echoing through the apartment. Dark, twisted forms began to emerge from the shadows. Edward and I ran, my heart pounding. These creatures were relentless, their hunger for fear palpable. We found temporary refuge in a hidden room. Edward and I devised a plan to break the curse. We needed to find the source of the mirror's power and destroy it. The whispers guided us, urging us deeper into the dark version of my apartment. In the heart of the alternate apartment, we found a locket. It pulsed with a dark energy, clearly the source of the mirror's power. As I reached for it, the creatures attacked. Edward fought them off, urging me to destroy the locket. The fight was fierce. The creatures were strong, but Edward's spirit was determined. With a final burst of courage, I crushed the locket underfoot. The creatures shrieked in agony and began to dissolve into shadows. With the locket destroyed, the mirror began to ripple and destabilize. Edward urged me to leave before the portal closed. I hesitated, wanting to bring him with me, but he shook his head. His time had come. I stepped through the mirror just as it collapsed. Back in my world, everything seemed normal. The whispers were gone, and the shadows no longer moved. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. I sealed the mirror and vowed never to touch it again. I tried to move on with my life. The experience had changed me. I was more cautious, more aware of the unseen. I started researching other cases of alternate universes and paranormal activities, hoping to find answers and perhaps prevent others from falling into the same trap. My research led me to other haunted locations, each with their own dark histories and whispers of alternate realities. I became a paranormal investigator, documenting my findings and helping others who were haunted by shadows and whispers. Just when I thought I was free, the whispers returned. This time, they were different. They spoke of a new danger, a darkness that was spreading. The creatures from the mirror were not just confined to that alternate universe anymore. I gathered a team of like-minded individuals, each with their own experiences of the paranormal. Together, we prepared to face this new threat. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but we were determined to protect our world from the encroaching darkness. We confronted the darkness head-on. The battle was intense, with shadows and creatures attacking from all sides. But with courage and determination, we managed to push them back, sealing the portals they used to enter our world. The whispers faded, and the shadows returned to their proper place. Though the immediate danger was over, I knew the fight was never truly finished. The mirror remained a constant reminder of the thin veil between our world and the unknown. But now, I was ready. I had faced the darkness and survived, and I would continue to protect our world from the horrors lurking just beyond the mirror's edge. The mirror. I never believed in alternate universes or the paranormal. My name is Alex, and I'm a pragmatist by nature. But that all changed one rainy evening. It began with an old mirror I found at a yard sale. Its intricate frame, covered in strange symbols, caught my eye. The seller was eager to get rid of it, almost too eager. I should have seen that as a warning. When I hung the mirror in my living room, a chill ran down my spine. Its reflective surface seemed darker, deeper than any mirror I'd ever seen. I shrugged it off and went about my evening. But later that night, I saw something in the reflection that wasn't in my room, a shadowy figure standing behind me. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. I turned around, and of course, no one was there. But when I looked back in the mirror, the figure was closer. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart pounded as I backed away from the mirror, unsettled by what I'd seen. I tried to distract myself with TV, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. Objects in my apartment were moved when I returned home from work. The air grew colder, and I constantly felt an eerie presence. One night, I glanced at the mirror and saw a version of myself staring back, twisted, malevolent, and grinning. I stumbled back, heart racing. The whispers started a week later. They were faint at first, barely audible, like a distant conversation. But they grew louder each night, emanating from the mirror. "Join us," they said. "Find the truth." Sleep became impossible, and my health deteriorated. I knew I had to get rid of the mirror, but something compelled me to keep it. Desperation drove me to research the symbols on the mirror's frame. I discovered they were ancient runes, linked to otherworldly portals and dark rituals. The more I read, the more I felt the mirror was a gateway to another dimension. One night, the whispers became screams, and the mirror's surface rippled like water. I reached out, and my hand passed through. Curiosity overrode fear, and I stepped through the mirror. I found myself in a twisted version of my apartment, shrouded in darkness. Shadows moved independently, and the air was thick with malevolence. I felt an overwhelming urge to return, but the mirror had vanished. In this alternate universe, I was not alone. Shadowy figures roamed the halls, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. They watched me with hollow eyes, their presence suffocating. I realized they were the spirits of those trapped in this dimension, victims of the mirror. A figure emerged from the shadows, different from the others. It was a man, or at least it once had been. His eyes glowed with a sickly green light, and his voice was a guttural growl. He introduced himself as the Guardian, the keeper of the mirror and the one who controlled this dark realm. He revealed that I was chosen to be the next Guardian. Desperate to escape, I begged the Guardian to let me go. He laughed, a sound devoid of any humanity. He said the only way out was to find the mirror's twin, located somewhere in this nightmarish version of my world. My only ally was a shadow woman who retained some of her sanity. She told me the twin mirror was in the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town. Navigating the dark streets, I reached the mansion, a decaying relic of a bygone era. Inside, it was a maze of shifting walls and endless corridors. The shadow woman guided me, but we were constantly pursued by the Guardian's minions. The air grew thicker with each step as if the house itself was alive. At the mansion's heart was the Chamber of Mirrors. Hundreds of them lined the walls, each showing different worlds, different possibilities. Finding the twin mirror was like finding a needle in a haystack. The shadow woman told me to look for the one that reflected my true self. Just as I found the mirror, the Guardian appeared. He was furious, his form towering and monstrous. The room filled with the tortured screams of souls he had claimed. In the chaos, I shattered several mirrors, causing the room to warp and distort. The Guardian lunged at me, but the shadow woman intervened, sacrificing herself to give me a chance. I jumped through the twin mirror, feeling a jolt as reality shifted. I landed back in my living room, gasping for breath. The mirror was gone, and everything was as it should be. Or so I thought. My reflection, however, looked slightly off, a reminder of the nightmare I'd escaped. Despite being back, the horrors of the alternate universe haunted me. I saw shadows in the corners of my eyes and heard faint whispers at night. I was paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder. Friends noticed my change, but I couldn't tell them the truth without sounding insane. I tried to return to a normal life, but the experience had changed me. I became obsessed with the paranormal, reading every book and article I could find. I learned that mirrors have long been considered portals to other worlds, and my encounter was just the tip of the iceberg. One night, I woke to find a note on my nightstand, written in an ancient language. As I deciphered it, I realized it was from the Guardian. He had chosen me to be his successor, and the process had already begun. My reflection became more distorted each day, and I felt a dark power growing within me. Unable to fight it, I felt myself slipping away. My thoughts grew darker, and my actions more malicious. I realized the Guardian's essence was merging with mine, transforming me into the very thing I had feared. The shadow people appeared in my dreams, urging me to embrace my destiny. Desperate for a solution, I found a ritual that could sever the Guardian's hold on me. It required confronting him in his realm and destroying the original mirror. Armed with this knowledge, I prepared myself for one final journey through the mirror. Returning to the alternate universe, I confronted the Guardian in his lair. The battle was fierce, each of us wielding dark powers. The shadows watched, their fates tied to the outcome. With a final surge of strength, I shattered the original mirror, releasing a blinding light that consumed the Guardian. I awoke in my living room, the mirror gone and the whispers silenced. The shadows had vanished, and I felt a sense of peace for the first time in months. The ordeal had left its mark, but I was free. I vowed to live my life fully, never forgetting the alternate universe and the darkness that lurked within.